Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 28th of October, comes to you from London. The dollar continuing to climb on the short-term chart, really looking like it's finding support here on the cloud with the medium-term daily chart. We are through on the price, but we've been through on the price before. We are still holding on this trend, and the long-term trend is still bullish. So dollar strength is still the theme. If we look at the euro against the dollar, we see that that's inevitably weak on all three time frames, still with downside targets hanging over us. The Japanese yen, dollar actually looking stronger here as well, and this medium-term transition is a real sign that the dollar is showing its strength. The yen, normally a safe haven, the dollar actually looking safer still now that we're through on that medium-term chart. We've still got work to do on the long-term chart, but we are seeing the dollar moving into new trends with the yen. Sterling sitting at 128.40, largely holding on to the gains that we've seen in recent weeks. Bullish on the medium-term chart. The long-term chart is still bearish. We're hitting some resistance there, and a lot will come down to Brexit, of course. On the euro, we're seeing sterling again looking strong. Medium and long-term, it's recovered to bullish positions there. Short-term is just looking a little bit bearish as we see a little bit of a sell-off, but sterling actually starting to look pretty good. Against the Swiss franc, much the same picture here, and the short-term chart just heading into bullish as well. If we look at Bitcoin, we're sitting at over $9,000. So we've recovered last week. We did dip down below that $8,000 level, but there is an appetite to buy Bitcoin, and we're seeing here that we've got a new upside target on this bounce, and we will have here as well. It has bounced on long-term support on the point and figure chart, but this is some $15,000 is that new target. Of course, we have to move higher to activate it, so we've got to break above this high that we saw last week. So that's quite key as well. US stock market sitting above that 3,000 level on the S&P 500 index, just starting to push to new highs. You can see here in the chart, not quite breaking there, but we're now so close it's looking quite likely. The same with the NASDAQ. We are nudging that new high territory, and so that's looking pretty bullish too. We're bullish on all three time frames with upside targets. A shortage of long-term upside targets is the only real concern, but at the moment the markets do look like they'll shrug off global economic worries and move higher, and the same with the Dow. The Russell 2000, of course, is lagging. It's still not managing to break to anywhere near new highs, so the breadth is a little bit of a concern there. The futures this morning, we're seeing the S&P future up 0.17%, and the NASDAQ E-mini is up 0.3%, and so that is indicating that the market will move higher, so don't be surprised to see new all-time highs in the major US indices this week. The UK market is down this morning. We're down by 0.3%. We'll look at the individual stocks in a minute, and the mid-caps just down are up very slightly, so flat there. The same in Germany. We're fairly little change, but we are still holding on to bullish in all three time frames. And the CAC 40 in Paris also holding on to bullish in all three time frames, though it's down slightly this morning. The Japanese market was relatively flat as well, and the Hang Seng actually was up 0.8%, and Shanghai Composite in China was up 0.8% as well. So we're seeing those markets performing quite well. And the Sensex in India up 0.5%, and again we're seeing the charts all bullish here. Remembering this is the long term, the medium term, and the short term trend. And we look at the S&P 500 index. The Aussie market, and we see here we're also looking bullish as well. Brent crude sitting at $61.80, so holding on to short-term bullish here, but really in the doldrums on these medium and long-term charts still. We have got quite good upside targets here at $65, 6% higher, so we are seeing a little bit of an improvement there. WTI also sitting higher in the mid-50s, and that medium-term chart starting to look a little bit better as well. US NatGas sitting at $2.38. We really have been in the doldrums around this 2.30 level. Bit of a jump last week at the end of the week. It still puts us into medium-term bullish, but lots of work to do. We've seen so many false dawns on NASDAQ. On NatGas is quite hard to call. Looking at gold, we're above the $1,500 mark again, so that's short-term bullish, holding on to the gains that we've seen. So no real upside targets on the short-term chart. 4% higher, 1566 is the target on the medium term, and the long-term targets we're still seeing up to $1,700. That will be, of course, the previous high point resistance, which it'd be interesting to see if we can actually get there. Silver also looking strong as well, bullish on all three time frames. And US 10-year yields we're seeing down 0.25% this morning, so that's quite key. But they're still holding on to those gains, sitting at 1.83%, and it looks like the medium-term chart will transition. So it looks like a bottom there for bond yields in the US, and that conversely means that bond prices here we're looking at the German bond prices looking set to go lower, the medium term breaking down, this head and shoulders which we've talked of, and we're bearish on the short term chart. So quite key there. Now if we look at the individual stocks themselves, that data was coming from Thomson Reuters Yahoo. Thomson Reuters, here we're using Yahoo Finance. Look at the best performer on Friday and the Dow was Intel, up 8%. That's quite a big jump for Intel, and they're looking pretty bullish there. The relative trend hasn't been great versus the Dow Jones, but it looks like Intel might be turning a corner, and the worst performer was Coca-Cola Group. They were down 1.5%. So that chart's still looking pretty good, even though they're the worst performer on Friday. They have got good upside targets as well. In the Nasdaq, the best performer was Tesla. They were up 9.5%, a real jump for them, and that stock starting to look really quite interesting. Breaking out of the relative now. A bit of a shortage of upside targets. We do have this big 70% upside target on the long-term chart, but very hard to read. We've still got a lot of resistance to hit through. 375 been looking like a pretty strong resistance point, but Tesla looking better for sure. Looking at the downside, we've got Illumina. They're down 7.8% on Friday, so they're starting to look like they're breaking through that long-term trend bearish. So that sell-off we saw several weeks back is now starting to have an impact. The Aussie market, the best performer in Oz was Pilbara Minerals. They're up 10.7%. Not enough to change the chart. Really dire looking chart here. And then if we look at the worst performer, it was Sims Metal Management, and that chart also not looking great. In India, we take a look at the Nifty 50 here. Again, this coming from Yahoo Finance. We've got Yes Bank, they're up 13%. Not enough to change the chart though. And Tata Motors were up 10%, and again, not enough to change the chart. If we look at the downside here, just click on the percentage column. Bharti Infratel down 10%, so that really is falling out of bed now, and that's what we expect to see. You get falling prices and downtrends. Looking to Europe now. We start by looking at the FTSE 100. The best performer this morning is Marks and Sparks. They're up 2.5%. Not enough to change the trend here. They've underperformed the Dow Jones by 40% this year. So still very much in the doldrums, but they are the best performer this morning. And on the downside, we've got HSBC. They're out with results this morning, which have disappointed the market, then given a growth outlook that's a little bit worrying. So that's quite key as well. The FTSE 250, we're looking here at Cirrus Minerals. They're up 4% this morning, but not enough to change the picture there as well. Just Group up 3.37%. Again, just looking like they might be going through a recovery. The relative looking quite good there as well. And if we look at the downside, we've got Cairn Energy down 10%, and that is still looking worrying on the long-term chart and falling back into medium-term downtrend. Looking across to the majors in Europe now, we've got the Euro Stoxx 50s. Here we see the live prices coming in from Yahoo Finance. L'Oreal is up 1.7% this morning. They're the best performer. Still a pretty good-looking chart. The relative holding on there. We've got Daimler, Volkswagen, BMW. So car makers doing quite well this morning. And if we look at the downside, we've got a whole group. They're down 1.5%, but the chart's still holding on. Vinci in Paris, that chart looking still pretty good, even though they're down 1.4 this morning. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.